Okay, Mike's prepping because one of the questions we got asked the most when we got these carving sets is, can I carve on a bowl and how do I do it? I know that's a huge topic, right? But can you just show us a little sampling of something on this bowl?
Yeah, what we could do, well, if we think about it, there's 4 potential faces that you could carve on a bowl. Let's have a look at a bowl. Can I use this one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So first you could use the rim. So if you had a platter, for example, with a wide rim, that's a nice area that you could put a design around. You've got the concave part of the bowl. Now, which may not be functional if you had a decorative area inside, but it depends what decoration you're putting on. But it's certainly a face that you could decorate, even if it's just part of it. Maybe it's a ridge within it. If it's, it's a shallower platter going in. So you've got the rim, concave side of the bowl. The convex side of the bowl here is another face which is asking for decoration. And finally, the foot or the base or plinth. Oftentimes, turners might like to identify that this is their work. Well, the obvious way of doing that is putting a name or initials, but also you could have a logo,
or a symbol or something.
a design. Yeah, you could have your own symbol, like Prince.
That's right.
Didn't he have a symbol?
The woodcarver formerly known as Mike.
Yeah, the woodcarver. Yeah, so you could develop a symbol.
Nice.
Yeah. So to do an example here, we're just gonna. So this is a. Is this a finished bowl, Chad?
No, I appreciate that, but no, it's a rough bowl.
I thought I would check. So, so what we're going to do is just put a decoration around the outside. Now, I'll put the decoration in, and then you could continue to turn it afterwards.
Okay.
You'll still get that edge detail,
Yeah.
so long as, obviously, you don't turn the top rim. But the top rim is all over the place.
Yeah. Very rough.
No, but that's totally cool, because if I do sort of a not rough carving, but if I do a more rugged, rustic carving, it'll be quite in keeping that actually it's not a straight line.
Oh, that's cool.
So we can.
That's a good idea.
So what I'm doing is, whilst it will look rustic, there will be a couple of things that we don't want to happen. One of that is that when we're putting decoration around a bowl, I think it's better on the eye, in most cases, depending on the design, but certainly for this design, that we see the lines irradiating out equally. Because you imagine if you got a bit carried away and then all of a sudden the lines, if it was part of a design, it'd be fine, but if some of it is radiating into the centre and then others are a bit off centre, it probably wouldn't look so good. So the one standard, the one thing that we want to maintain is that the lines that I'm going to create are all going to radiate into the centre. To do that, I've just got a little pin and a piece of string. And to start off with, I've got some dividers. I've chosen the tool, the carving tool that I'm going to use, and I've roughly gauged the area that I'm going to carve, and then I've set my dividers accordingly. So now I'm walking the dividers around and just putting a mark where each of these points will be. There's going to be a bit of fine-tuning at the end, because unless I'm absolutely very fortunate and lucky, it's unlikely that I am going to finish up with a perfect equal segment. It's probably going to be either too small or too big. So once we've worked our way around, then there'll be a bit of tidying up that we will do to get them so, yeah, right, so here we go. So we can see now, look, it's too small. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do is just make each one a little bit bigger until they marry in. So I'm just putting sort of an extra. I was going to say millimetre, but we can't say that, can we, Chad?
No, we can.
Can we?
Yeah.
What would it be? What's a millimetre in inches? 16th, 32nd.
Boy, it's got to be like a 32nd or
Right.
in between that and 16.
Yeah, so I just added incrementally a little bit more until I've got my equal divisions. So now with the string, I'm just going to work my way around, giving myself a line to work towards so that they'll all be radiating outwards. Now, here's a thing. We could do all the way around the bowl, or you could just do, you don't have to go all the way around the bowl.
It's true. It's like, could be ornamental, right?
Yeah, so you could just do a small little section, but given that the rim of the bowl is not uniform, it would probably be better to go all the way around, wouldn't it, I think?
Mm. How am I doing as an apprentice?
You are doing fine. You haven't made a cup of tea yet, though, Chad. So
No, is that the big
oh
test?
yeah, the tea making skills were essential for any apprentice.
Your carving is fine, but your tea is what makes it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sweeping the workshop floor at the end of the day, that was also my job. I was always in trouble for not doing that properly. And actually my tea making skills were pretty horrific too. I mean, I like tea the way I make it, but everyone thinks it looks like beef stew, I think was the... So I'm getting a bit... All right, so then we are good. How's that? So we've got a series of lines radiating out. Okay, so we can now put this bowl on the lathe. Now the beautiful thing about the record lathes is they have an indexing facility, which means that we can lock the spindle in various positions, and it will form, rather than trying to carve on the lathe and it rotating, at least we can lock it in position. So I don't know whether you can see that, but I'm just going to give myself a bit of a line there, which will help me regulate the depth. All right, well, Chad, this is certainly a challenge, which is good, because what it's really doing, it's really challenging timber. It is carob, and carob, which is particularly dry and hard, and the grain is going all over the place. The other interesting thing that we need to think about is, of course, the grain is going in this direction, so as I'm carving across it, we've got all different grain directions to think about with a hard and dry piece of timber. The good thing is, it's really ensuring that we use the right techniques. So it's not a particularly interesting thing to demonstrate with, because it's challenging. But the good thing that you will be able to see is the technique. Now, this is what we're trying to achieve. So I don't know whether you can see that sort of detail along that top edge. So it's kind of a random sort of pattern, but doesn't the timber, I mean, that's a beautiful coloured timber. So I'm going to do a couple more. The holding method that we've got is, what is this, Chad? It's on the chuck, but it's on a post which is sitting in the banjo.
Yeah, it's a 1-inch post. You can mount it to a bench or in the banjo. I believe it's made by Trent Bosch, if I remember correctly. And then it's 1 1/4 for the 1 1/4 threads on the chuck.
It's perfect. This is, it will make it so versatile. One, possibly a little tall, because ideally the work should be the same height as your elbow, but it's a good working height and very versatile in that I can turn it, angle it, I can rotate it, so there's no problem with holding this nice and firmly. Okay. All right, so Chad has found this lovely little mallet, which is probably a little on the small side, but it's going to work perfectly well. Now, fist position, I'm anchored and tapping. Can you see how I'll cut the timber in that direction? So I'm going to start sliding down. Let's reaffirm as I've been playing with the water, I've lost my pen marks a little bit. So I'm going to start sliding the tool down.
Ooh, you can hear how dry that is.
Yeah. But you can also hear what a lovely sharp tool that is too.
Yeah.
So I'm carving down. Now I'm coming down in this direction. And now across the bottom. Sliding the tool as we go, and then you get this lovely polished cut. Now I'm conscious towards the end here, I don't want to break out the timber on the inside of the bowl, but the grain looks favourable in this position. There we go. Now, what we can do is with a slightly flatter edge tool, I can slide down in this direction. Yeah, it's rock hard. Hard as rock.
Well, you wouldn't come all the way from New Zealand and expect us to give you something easy, would you?
But like I say, Chad, it's good because, I mean, it would be nice to have a demonstration where, wow, it just glides and it looks effortless.
But that's not real life.
No, it's not. And the other thing is I'm really having to, look how I'm having to slide the tool to make sure I'm not going to break any of this grain out. I'm taking lovely little slithers of timber away.
Yeah, so if your technique's not strong here, you're going to have a lot of chip and
Yeah.
tear.
And really the bits that we're looking for, these ridge lines along the top, want to be nice and straight and clean. And of course you can clean that up later with a little bit of sandpaper. And if you wrap the sandpaper around a dowel or something circular, then you can just sort of refine that. Let's do the next one. So you see how with this little mallet, I'm actually holding the head of the mallet in my hand, and because it's brass, it's got a bit of weight, so I don't have to hit it too hard. I'm not taking big swings. So if we think about those techniques, tapping techniques, it's removing the bulk of the timber, and then we're sliding the tool to get a nice finished polished cut as we go. And you notice I'm not breaking out this rear edge, not just yet, until I can slide down. See, I'm sliding down and in that direction there. I just want to be careful that I don't break out the grain. So that's the other important thing. I mean, a good example of quality steel, because obviously to have a razor sharp cutting edge, you've got a very fine piece of metal. And when you're cutting into hardwoods with awkward grain, if you had inferior steel, then it would be very easy to round over or break the edge of that steel. And I'm still getting a lovely polished finish as I'm working this timber, which really demonstrates that the steel in the tools is excellent quality and holds a nice edge. All right, let's do the next one. And as I'm progressing around the bowl, I'm in a position with the grain now, which is getting easier. Oops.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looked like the last one went a lot smoother, so that's depending on where you're at.
It's the grain orientation.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I probably started in the worst possible, grain direction, but this is actually quite easy here.
But still nice and dry.
And nice and dry.
So Mike, obviously when you were setting this up, you used that string to kind of make sure all these lines point to the center. Is there ever a case where you might do lines straight across to like make it inconsistent to go to the center?
If
like abstract?
Yeah, if that's what the design is looking, if that's intentional, and that's the design that you're going for, then yeah, absolutely. But and you'll notice these are not all consistent and equal in width, so it's not a perfectly uniform design. But I feel that the only bit that should be uniform is the fact that they're all equally radiating in.
Yeah.
I think that will be the consistent part.
That makes sense.
So now all I've done is I've got a lathe fitting accessory. I've wrapped a bit of paper around it, and I'm just helping to smooth out those lines. So this is often a question that we get asked, should you be sanding your carving? And I think I mentioned before, there's two schools of thought really. Some carvers like to see tool marks. Nothing wrong with that at all, if that's the style that you're going for. Personally, I don't like seeing tool marks, but I do like nice, sharp, crisp lines. And the danger with sandpaper is sometimes you can lose or round over some crisp lines that you've created. And so I would try not to do that. What I am doing with this is it's helping me create nice, sharp ridge lines. And again, I'm focusing, making sure I'm focusing that they're heading towards the center of the piece. Okay, so all I've done now is I've tidied up the flutes, we'll call them, a little bit, and then I've just got some fine paper and equalised that out to take away any sort of unwanted little lumps and bumps, giving a nice edge on the inside and outside. And this is by no means perfect. I don't think it needs to be. It's quite rustic. And don't forget, the outside edge of that bowl was up and down. They're not perfectly uniform, but the uniform thing is that all lines radiate into the center. And of course, if you take a look at that now, so I don't know whether, can you see that there?
Yeah.
And if I put a little bit of water on there, it'll just highlight the grain and you can see what, or get an idea of what that would look like when it's finished. Can you see that? Is that doing what it should do?
Absolutely. And that bowl would, of course, be turned on the inside and the outside to clean up that as well.
Yeah, so you'll be able to re-establish those inside and outside lines. But yeah, well, that's one example of how you can use carving to embellish your turning.
And the shapes are unlimited, right?
Unlimited, yeah.
Well, thank you, Mike.
My pleasure.